Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. I am here today with Dave Shotgun Shell. We're going to talk about going from grit to gratitude. And if you've ever been one of those people in life where you've just powered through and pushed through, you're going to want to listen to this episode. It's going to take you some places that you probably didn't know you needed to go. And that's super exciting. Dave is the founder. He's a chairperson, a mentor. He's a former University Arizona Razorback football player, NFL hopeful, MMA fighter, and lots of business stuff. He's the founder of Blue Vantage and DC Packet. So before we dive into it, Dave, can you tell me what is the thing that you're most passionate about that you're working on these days?
Well, my real passion right now is DC Packet and what we're doing there. That's just, I've got a great mentor. One of my guys that I've spent a lot of time reading is a guy named Jeffrey Moore. And so he's written some books. And one of those books is Inside the Tornado. So he's got Crossing the Chasm and then Inside the Tornado. Read those when I was younger, been in started businesses and stuff. And DC Packet is in the Inside the Tornado right now, and I've never been a part of that. So that's really exciting to me. So from a business perspective, I'm extremely passionate about that and excited about that. From a personal perspective, I am really excited where I'm at on just executing on enthusiastically pursuing my potential. So that's the day-to-day that makes everything great, and you find joy in pursuing your potential. And I love doing that where I'm at now today. Really comfortable in that role.
That's beautiful. The place of being enthusiastic about exploring your potential and expanding your potential. It's, so many people are doing this from a place of I have to reach my potential. I have to be successful. I have to prove myself. But I can just feel from your energy that it's just fun for you.
Right. Yeah. It's everything you just said right there. When I realized that expectations can be the root of a lot of pain and agony and stress, dis-ease, as Dave would put it, right? And one of another guru, Asada Guru, actually is another guy I spend a lot of time watching and love what he says. And one of the things he said on a Dave Meltzer podcast is he said, and he does it with his hands. It's so great. He goes, I do, and either things will or they won't. But that doesn't change who I am. So what I go about in my life is focusing on what I do, and then they either will or they won't. And then I am still me. So what happens when you start embracing that, and that's where I'm excited about where I'm at, is it just becomes very simple. I go each day doing, and I try to do the things I love to do. All of us have to do things that we don't necessarily love doing. And I think Dave says, learn to love the things you hate doing, right? Or learn to love the things you hate. But regardless, I do what I want to do, and sometimes, and then it either does or it doesn't. But that feeds me every day, because I get up every day going, I got a lot of things to do, and they will or they won't, but that's okay.
Yeah. And you've mentioned Dave a couple of times before we dive into your story, and you've got a great story. Who is Dave to you?
Yeah, so Dave and I go back a long time, actually, early 2000 timeframe. He was a close friend, backyard barbecue. That's where I met Dave, hanging out and talking to him back when he was in his kind of Samsung Qualcomm days. And then Dave and I, we were having one of those backyard barbecues, and I was having a beer, and I'm like, Dave, how you doing? He's like, oh, I'm great. He always is, right? He's like, I'm always great, and I'm great. And then he's going like, well, honestly, I'm thinking about I might have to go through a bankruptcy. And I'm like, me too. So we connected at a totally different level. So when you read Dave's book, Connected to Goodness,
And that's
if
Dave
it,
Meltzer, by the way, everybody.
yeah,
Dave Meltzer.
Dave Meltzer. If you read Connected to Goodness, he'll start out by telling you his story, one of his stories. He has many, but one of the stories that really changed his life was that time frame when he and I met, to where he was kind of living at the top. He had arrived. That's one of his themes is don't arrive. um, but he had basically believed he was all of that, and then he's found radical humility, and he puts it out in his book, and his mission is to share that story with over 1 billion people. So that's who Dave Meltzer is. He's on a ride to do that. I'm a close personal friend. I've been right along with him because our philosophies are very much aligned, and so I just enjoy watching his ride. Um, and I don't have the same vision of helping 1 billion people, but I love being a part of his energy and what he's doing. So
Beautiful. And I think there's something to be said. It's like as we meet people that we're aligned with, our own capacity for what we create in the world expands. And it's a beautiful thing. Now,
well, I think what also comes from that, though, too, is like you said, being the wolf, we become, and this has definitely happened for me, is I actually figured out much more over the last 15, 20 years who I am
yeah,
and who I am not. And being comfortable in that, so I don't just need to pick up Dave's vision of helping 1 billion people and go, oh, me too. That's not me. But I love what I am and who I am and what I can do. And I absolutely love impacting, mentoring, and helping people. But but I do it differently. So
yeah. And that's the thing. It's like we all have our own special, unique things. And one of the things that I've discovered is that some of our unique things show up in our story. And so I want to dig into your story, but I want to start at a place that maybe a lot of people don't have you start at. There was an incident, I think you were 8 years old when then,
right.
yeah. Will you tell me it was near fatal? Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? It was I was 8 years old, little Tom Sawyer kid, trailer park kid, right? Mom and dad, very humble working parents. So I was a latchkey. We're in the summer break, and me and my little gang of guys are running around in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's one of those sweltering days, over 100 degrees and extremely hot. And in New Mexico, we have arroyos that where the dirt's just carved these gulches out. It's kind of that Southwest beauty that everybody sees. So we basically decided to carve a little notch in the side of the arroyo, and being the wise people that we were at the age of 8. Um, and so we're getting out of the sun, and we carved that little notch back, and we're having our meal, and the hill came down on us. So at one point in time, I was fully covered up in the cave in and unconscious. And anyway, went through a pretty traumatic experience there. It wasn't at 8, it's not that traumatic because I'm 8. You don't know how big the things are. But now looking back at it as my parents, it almost probably killed my parents to see me laying there with most of my face was gone because of the arroyo had ripped all that off, and my lower back was crushed, 2 vertebrae. They thought I was going to be paralyzed from the waist down, and
Oh, wow.
so it was killing my mom and my dad. Of course, I was still immortal because I was 8, right?
Right.
But
And
but
yeah. So the the arroyo came down, you got hit hard, and you survived.
yeah, survived. Kind of went through full body cast for a couple of months. Once I figured out I could walk, that was the biggest thing. Is for the first due to the swelling for the first 3 or 4 days, there was no sensation below the waist, so there was worry that I'd actually done some damage to the spinal cord. But once I started walking, then I spent the better part of 3 or 4 months in a full body cast, and then kind of went through rehabilitation,
What was
and
it?
then
What was it like to be? I mean, I'm going to use the word trapped, but I don't know if that's what it was like for you. But to be trapped in a body cast, I mean, 8-year-old boy wants to run around like crazy. So what was that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a challenging part of time, right? Because, they're telling you as an 8-year-old boy for a number of months to stay in bed, stay bedridden, uh, moderate movement, body cast, all that type of stuff. Um, so yeah, that was challenging because I was 8, so I was extremely bored. The good news is for whatever reason, I don't recall a lot of pain. So I wasn't dealing with a lot of pain. But I honestly look back at that story and that piece of the story. I look at it now from my parents' point of view, where I'm at in my life, and go, man, that was the gut wrenching part. When I told the story and I was working through that story, it brought a lot of emotions to the surface that I didn't realize I had because I'd never actually seen it from my parents' side of the fence. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When you
So,
were, but at the time for you, what was it like?
yeah, for me at the time, I was just, again, I think the cast period was limiting, but then after that, am I ever going to be able to get back into, sports like other kids? Am I going to be able to get to baseball? Because they're there for a couple of years. Um, everybody, doctors, mom, dad, they're all like, oh, you've crushed your vertebrae. Don't want to, the worry was that I'd had some fragments down there because they didn't surgically go in and do anything. So the worry was that I was going to exacerbate it and still damage the vertebrae. So for actually a couple of years there, it was like highly questionable whether I was going to get kind of back to just normal and being a normal kid again.
Yeah.
And then every time, I did something, I had to, once I disclosed that story to the trainers, the school, whoever I was doing athletics with, they would require me to go through a full X-ray to still prove that I wasn't, this close to being done.
Right. And so, well, it didn't stop you from doing sports.
Yeah,
And so you got into what was your was I know you got into football, but where did you play other sports too?
I did. I kind of, but not a lot, right? My story is kind of unique, especially considering the fact that I went professional in football. Because I didn't ever have a fantasy that I was going to be because of that, right? I didn't, a lot of kids started in Yaffle and all this other stuff. I didn't have any of that in my background. So I literally just showed up at the playground or the practice fields, actually not the playground, but the practice fields at the high school, um, my sophomore year in high school. And I was sitting under a shade tree while the kids were starting their two-a-days. And the coach came running over to me and saw, hey, you're a big kid. You want to play football? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Right. So that became a really, that was probably, if I were going to put like 10 or top 10 things in my life that changed my life, it would be me sitting under a shade tree and going, yeah, sure, why not? And then next thing you know, my life takes a totally different trajectory because I said yes and did something. So
Yeah,
now, of course, I didn't live onto it, right?
yeah, it's interesting. You talked earlier about no expectation, right? Like you do the thing and either it does or it doesn't. And it sounds like when you started playing sports, because of that history, you had no expectation around it.
Right. And in fact, that's the thing that I've now looked back over my history and see when I've been the most successful, I've just gone out and done.
Hmm.
And it either does or it doesn't, right? And a lot of times when I've got that type of approach to it, and I'm being enthusiastic, staying positive and motivated, it does more often than it does not, right? And I look back at that in my past and go like, because that was it. I had no expectations, didn't know anything about football. Next thing you know, I'm putting on some pads and I'm giving it a good old fashioned try. Now, I will tell you, I am compulsive. So I do me doing means I'm really committed to
Yeah.
doing it great, right? But that's just me doing it. I just love doing stuff. So when I get kind of that type of get something into my head, I'm like 100% into it because I'm passionate about it. So, but
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't have. I look back at it. I had no expectation that I was going to do anything special in football, and then you know, then Arkansas and University of New Mexico and 5 or 6 other colleges asked me to come play for them, which totally blew me away. So I was so grateful that happened to me. And then I got to the University of Arkansas and played for 4 years, didn't redshirt. So I guess I did a great job there. They never, I would have been better off probably if they would have redshirted me, but I did whatever they asked me to do. Um, and then when I was done, I thought I was done. And then Tech Schramm and the Dallas Cowboys asked me to come play, and now I'm in so totally different than a lot of what I think a lot of people do. I don't know why I've been so blessed that way, but I have. And it seems like the more if I just stay positive and enthusiastically do what I love doing, the outcome has been pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think there's a path maybe that's set for us. And when we try and control it, which is when we get negative, like, oh, I have to do it this way or it has to happen this way, then we're not following the path necessarily.
I would agree.
And so I like to look at patterns. I like to look at what are the things that happened to us when we were young that tend to repeat in a way for us to expand more fully into whatever theme maybe we're here to create. Um, so through your football career, you had quite a few concussions, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, and before and after. Yeah, it seems to be a pretty common theme that I wasn't paying much. Well, I didn't pay any attention to it because we didn't even think about it those days. So it wasn't until after people started paying attention to it that I actually tried to sit down one time and count how many major concussions I've had throughout my life, and I can count at least 25, more than 25
Yeah.
major concussions that I've had throughout my life. Obviously, pretty bad one with the cave in, but there's some stories I didn't even talk about in the book. When I was 2, I had this brilliant idea when we were having a rock fight with the kids behind us. My brother and I were throwing rocks, and they were throwing rocks, and that's all really brilliant stuff for 2-year-olds and 6-year-olds. Um, and I thought, hey, they can't reach me if I just stand up against the fence, because I was thinking, you know, throwing a rock. Anyway, so they got even more brilliant and dropped a cinder block on my head.
Oh,
So I had something like about 30 stitches at the bright age of 2. So I'm sure and so that kind of just started my trajectory. So, and then, like you said, NFL, and then I was in professional fighting after football. And, um, there was a lot of times when I'd walk out of the ring with my head uh, being pretty gone. So
yeah. So
a lot
I
of things happen.
yeah. I mean, you look at that, the story at 2, and then you've got the cave-in story at 8, and then so there's this I like to look at, like, okay, what's the thing that maybe I didn't process? What did I not clear in that first time when you're 2? And when you're 2, you don't even know what's going on. So
Mhm.
how can you even process what's going on? And then 8, and then there's plenty of people who've had a concussion when they were young, but they didn't end up repeating the concussions over and over. And
Yeah.
so there's this path that having these concussions took you on. And I think about the path that's laid out for us that we're here to explore. What is the path that having the concussions took you on? What was the result of the concussions, and then what was the path
Yeah, I
beyond?
think I think the concussions were a byproduct of who I was and who I became, right? And maybe through those things that I experienced, I did get a joie de vivre for life. Basically, when I kind of came out of that, and I could run, Forrest, run. So when I could run, I loved running, right? I mean, or at least I loved being very active. So I became very adrenaline focused, getting that hit of adrenaline, whether it was in motocross or football or fighting, professional fighting, and always been a big fan of being fearless. Scary. A lot of people, it's funny. I tell a story for my next thing after fighting because that got cut off when I had two in diapers and I came home all messed up, and that had to stop. And so the next thing I did to do my adrenaline was karaoke, uh, uh, and I was not a singer, so it just scared the crumb out of me.
Yeah.
And that was my next adrenaline rush. So I've just always been an adrenaline rush. Like if it's going to scare me, then I want to do that and I want to overcome it and kind of embrace that. So that was very much a part of my life. Almost probably until I was probably about 10, 15 years ago. And then 10 or 15 years ago, I'm going like, that's kind of silly. I don't need to keep on finding these near death experiences. I'm good. I can find other ways to get my dopamine and my endorphins and keep it at a at a steady kill as opposed to these spikes to go out and get my dopamine.
Right. It's interesting you use the phrase finding these near death experiences. And, karaoke for some people can feel like a near death experience. For me, I know I did karaoke once a long time ago, and I had a massive fear of singing in public because of some stuff that happened to me when I was young. It was my favorite thing in the world. And then I got shamed in front of the whole class and
Right.
this big thing. So the one time I did karaoke back then, I mean, it was like near death feeling experience. So I
Yeah.
totally understand that, but it's also so interesting, right? As you have these near death experiences when you're a kid, and then you're chasing them.
Right.
And I think subconsciously we tend to chase these things that maybe we didn't completely resolve when we were
Yeah.
younger. And
Well, yeah. And I don't even know if it's resolved. I mean, I get where you're coming from for resolve, but it's one of these things to where you think it's the way. You're
yeah,
like, hey, I need that
yeah.
deal. And when you're looking at it from, I'm going to forget the neuroscience guy from Stanford that I love so much, what his name is. Anyway, he's brilliant, but he talks about how, you know, a lot of us, it's like, hey, I need that adrenaline. But what happens with our brain and our physiology is the next time you need it here, then you need it here, and then you need it here. And you're just
Yeah.
constantly amping it up. And it eventually leads to dissatisfaction, right? Because you're always trying to do more. And if you can't get more, then it kind of gets back around, I think, to what you were getting to where you start getting very dissatisfied with your life because you're going like, I can't get that rush. I can't get that feeling anymore. And you kind of live for that feeling. And it's a very addictive feeling. And I totally understand and empathize with anybody who lives that reality. I lived it for a number of my years. Um, and trying to find a way to actually do these little things and kind of find that steam's constant is where I've gone, and it's my way. But I found it to actually be very, very exciting and motivating, as opposed to now I gotta, put it all on seven and here we go, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also that idea. And to your point, it's like it's what you knew, it's what you experienced your early reality to be. And what most people don't realize is that around between the ages of 9 and 10, the default mode network comes online and kind of locks in your reality. Like, this is the way life is. And so you had these like near death experiences. And now this is the way you live life. And, we all have our own version of this. For yours, it
Mm-hmm.
is this, leaning into this fear. For me, it was
Absolutely.
a little different. And for everybody else, everyone's got their own flavor of what their version of reality is. And so when I speak to resolve, it's this point of, oh, that doesn't have to be my reality. It can be something different. And how do you move it into a different frame of reality. And so, what I'm hearing in your story is that you did that. You moved from this is the way life is. I have to keep chasing the dopamine, face the fear, have these near death experiences because this is what this human reality is.
Yeah.
And then so there's a point when maybe that's not serving you so well anymore. So it's time to shift your reality into something different. How are you able to do that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because when you frame it that way, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. The analogy of gambling, I was always the guy that was like all in, right? And the enthusiasm, like, here we go, we're all in. And if you read my story, I have some incredible ups, and then I have some incredible downs. And I think the way I shifted my reality was starting to realize that, hey, what I think I if I look back at it, and it was kind of that same time when I met Dave, I really started looking into what's it all about, right? Because I'm in my mid 40s at that point in time, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and so I'm like, am I going to just keep rocking and rolling for 5 years and then crash and then get back up and rock and roll for 5 years and crash? Because I've done that 3 or 4 times by that time, and really was asking what's it all about, and is this going to be the rest of my life? And so I basically recast what it was all about, and it started out as a spiritual journey, as I was telling you, and I thought that was what it was going to be about. I thought I was going to become basically a spiritual person.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, I think I told you, or one of my friends was telling me I needed to go into the monastery because every time I would talk, I had all these really deep spiritual um, conversations. And then I basically came back away from that and realized that wasn't it. But now I was no longer an adrenaline junkie. I mean, what I came back away from the spiritual deal was, hey, I didn't need to divorce myself 100% from the rat race or the game or whatever you want to call it. It didn't have to be black or white. It's like, hey, there is a way to actually apply all these principles over here in moderation, and uh, and then find joy in the day to day. And that was the path that I took. And it started out spiritual, and it ultimately ended up becoming just consistent, persistent application of enthusiastically pursuing my potential, right? So kind of using some of our language.
Beautiful. And there were some things that you did to get deeper into the spiritual. Because I know one of the things that I think a lot of times will be in one realm. So you were very much in the physical realm because especially with the
Right.
sports and everything, using your body. And then swing into the other side, went into the spiritual realm. And now it sounds like you're in this place where you're putting it all together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what happened? Like I said, I'm very passionate and compulsive about what I'm doing. So it, when all this started, my wife actually at that time, had to church and found out, or not found out, somebody had used the word, a family that prays together stays together, right? That phrase has been around a
Mhm.
lot. And so somebody had brought that into our environment. And so she came home and said, hey, I want to pray. I want to pray together. And so this just defines who I am. So I went into a deep dive. Okay, what is prayer? Right? I mean, fine. If I'm going to commit to praying together, what is prayer? And believe it or not, that's actually a really complex definition, because it has a lot of definitions from a lot of different pantheons and belief systems and everything else, whether
Yeah.
it's meditation or whatever. What is prayer? So that's where it really went to, and to me, it translated to, when I got into the one that I put most of um, my strength behind, was contemplative, what I now consider contemplative prayer, which means quiet prayer, trying to quiet the mind, which is meditation to a lot of people. Um, and that's what I was telling you about the entrainment. So then I got to the point where I would literally quiet my mind and do 2 1-hour sessions a day, because it was so awesome what I could do there and bring myself to such a quiet place. And I did that for probably about 3 or 4 years, to where I was almost an hour, 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning, an hour at night, spending all of that time trying to get as close as possible to nothingness. And if anybody in the audience has ever tried to think of nothing, it's really tough. So, but it's you're never going to execute and be perfect at it. So it just keep on challenging you to get better at it.
Yeah. And so what were some of the results from that? Like, you did a deep dive in that direction,
So
and uh,
I laugh with Dave all the time, because Dave came out of that deal, and his tagline is he's going to, make a lot of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of fun. So my mentor, our mutual friend, Dave Meltzer, that's his tagline. At that exact same time, I said, I want to go find peace and harmony. Be careful what you ask for, because peace, I found an incredible amount of peace and harmony. I was the most peaceful, harmonic I'd ever been in my life. What that translated to was I was divorced. The kids lived with mom. I didn't have a dog. I didn't have a cat. I had an apartment with 4 white walls, a recliner, and a bed. Right. So I kind of lived in this isolationist spot, and I had a tremendous amount of peace and harmony. Right. And I totally divorced my life from stress. And it so I got what I asked for, and I got what I was focusing on, but it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I really wanted,
yeah,
because I didn't want to be that divorced from everybody. So the good news is as I came to that realization right after my friend told me to go get in a monastery, I said, okay, that's not going to happen. So then I started to embrace the other. I cut back on 2 hours of meditation a day and started re-engaging, and have a tremendous relationship with my kids, have a dog, have a cat. So I've totally re-engaged in the world since then, but now it's it's um, it's again this moderate day to day. Let's do things that we love doing, like this,
yeah,
hopefully somebody out there resonates with what I'm saying. But if they don't, that's okay. I do, and either it will or it won't.
yeah. I think one of the things that's really important, and you see this a lot with people who are very spiritual, like they have nothing, and they're peace and harmony, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what they want, and maybe that fulfills them. But for a lot of people, it's not. And a lot of people are using that spirituality, the meditation, the going up into the ether, so to speak, to escape. And I think there's this beautiful thing that can happen if you're willing to connect spiritually and bring that insight, bring that beauty, that peace, and that harmony down into the physical reality of the earth that we live on in, and bring it into the world. And I think from that place is where we really create the most profound and, say, high frequency things in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it, right? I mean, that's absolutely true, right? Because when I was all isolated like that and I was in that harmonic state, I was having no impact on the universe or people around me. And to your point, that was probably a form of escapism, right? And so good, I've escaped, great, right? But then is this the rest of my life? But you're right. Now that I've come back to this spot, and this is the reason why I wrote the book, and this is the reason why I'm comfortable having this conversation with you without feeling any hypocrisy about it and everything, because God knows I'm not the perfect man, and nobody needs to person, and nobody needs to be trying to replicate my life. But I'm happy with who I am and where I'm at, and
Yeah.
I'm happy with the impact that I'm having on the universe now, because now I'm creating a vibration. I'm at a vibration that I'd love other people to join me at. Um, of course, I'm unlike Dave or most people. Lot I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time asking people to join me. They're an invitation, not an obligation. Anybody's welcome to join me in this spot, but if they don't, that's okay too. So,
Yeah. Either it does or it doesn't.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, you're going to see a repeating theme with me, right? And that's the way it works in my world, in the business world too. Is I do a lot of things now from a business perspective, and we invest a lot of money, and obviously I got to set a lot of expectations on where the company is going to go and all that type of stuff. But at the same time, it either does or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then we'll adjust, align, and take action. So,
yeah. One of the things that struck me as you were talking about, when you were in your spiritual, like extreme spiritual phase, is you had spent all this time meditating, focusing on nothing. And then you said, but the impact I was having was nothing.
yeah, exactly.
And so,
Exactly.
like that, you get what you focus on. It's like, yes, you created the peace and the harmony, but the impact was nothing. And so, it stands to me, it stands to reason that your soul wanted to have an impact. So, that nothingness wasn't actually in full alignment. The peace and the harmony was in alignment, but not the nothingness. And so, it required you to actually do something and then have it,
Right.
of course, have it do, or it does or it doesn't. Um, so you wrote the book, and tell me about the book.
So the book basically goes over a lot of the things we've covered here today. It's kind of a synopsis of kind of some of the highlights and downfalls that I went through. That's probably half the book, maybe the first 2/3 of the book, kind of just, and I think on the beginning, on the preface, I'm like, the point I'm trying to get across is in the last third. And the first 2/3 is, why are you listening to me? So you can skip it if you know, you don't want to hear my stories and stuff like that, because they're stories, right? Um,
So,
but the last third of the book is basically what I've taken away as the primary things that have led me to here and led me to success. And to that extent, one, it's the brain, and that's at the top of the stack. You'll hear me talk a lot about the next step over in brain entrainment is neurofeedback therapy. I'm a huge fan of that. It's really big in the sports world right now. A lot of the professional quarterbacks are doing it. It's my understanding Troy Aikman did it to get over his concussions and things of that nature. And so it's one of the few things in the world that has scientifically been proven to help people with concussions. So, so through those case studies, so I got into that heavily. And then what I realized is that the brain is the basis of everything. So uh, finding that calmness and getting the brain healed, healthy, not only from the physical trauma, but the non-physical trauma we go through all the time. You talked about a really rough childhood, and that actually changes the synapses in your brain. That wires you a certain way. You were talking about at that 8-year-old, where you're trying to break that paradigm and kind of get those synapses lined up in a more healthy way and stuff like that. So neurofeedback therapy helped me a lot in doing that. And so that's what I focus on for a minute and say, hey, get your brain in a good spot, however you have to do that. There's all kinds of great ways to do that. And then I'm a big believer in the gifts, and they're pretty much the same gifts that Dave promotes in his. I structure them purposefully the way I do, because I believe like the gift of receiving is the first thing I think we should focus on. And I focus on that in the book. And the reason why I say that is we grow up from the time we're 3, share your toys. It's better to give than receive. We
right.
grow up with all this mantra going on. And so we get an expectation, and we think we have to give. But if we're giving from a place that's empty, that's not healthy. That'll take you bankrupt spiritually or financially. And so many people I, I see men all the time mostly, but I shouldn't say that. It's people that they're too proud to receive. I'm like, hey, just so I really want to point out that you should um, learn and master the gift of receiving. And then there's there's 4 other gifts. there that I point at, and it ends with the gift of giving, because if I believe that if you receive, you acknowledge, you witness, and you renew, take those gifts, then you will have abundance in your life. And if you have that abundance, now you should be giving from that. And true giving is giving from a place of abundance, not giving from uh,
A
a,
place to lack.
a, a lacking place, right? So that's really what I wanted to focus on. That is because I find that is it when I have young people that are coming to me. I have a number of young people that work for me now, and that's one thing I'm trying to get them to do is to get better at receiving my knowledge, receiving coaching, receiving help, assistance,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and then witnessing how other people do it, acknowledging those around you when people do it well, and then actually the gift of renewal, making sure that we refresh on a regular basis so that we're fresh and ready to keep that cup going. And then ultimately, if you do all those things, then you'll have abundance and you can give from that spot.
Yeah.
So that's why my book that's kind of the essence of the book.
And I want to tell everybody, do not skip the story. And there's a reason for this because, well, you may be humble and be like, my story doesn't matter. The way we learn at a subconscious level, the way we learn best is through story, because we see ourselves in other people's stories. And through their story, the story meets people where they're at. A lot of times when we give people all this information, this is what my takeaways and da 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 da, somebody might not be in a place to receive that.
That's right.
But yet, in the story, there will be other things and other learnings that they will gain from it. So it's do not skip the story, people. And the book is called From Grit to Gratitude. Where did they get it?
It's on Amazon, but more importantly, I'm a big fan again of just send me your contact information, either through Be the Wolf or whatever, and I'll actually be more than happy to send you a free copy of it. So yeah, but you can get it on Amazon, but I'd be more than happy to send you a free copy as well.
Amazing. That's so generous, right?
Yeah,
And those of you listening, if this has piqued your interest at all, practice that receiving.
yeah, exactly. I'd be more than happy to give it, and then hopefully you receive it, and hopefully it connects with you or somebody else in your life.
Beautiful. Dave, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
For you, what does it mean to be the wolf?
Yes, it's to be me, to be the essence of who I am. And it's such a good analogy because I am a wolf by nature. I've always been kind of right there at the top of the pack. I'm a pack animal. That was a thing I didn't really allude to. That was a reason why I wasn't so happy when I
Mm.
was, because I'm a pack animal. And I've been an alpha wolf most of my life, still am an old alpha wolf, right? And I love being at this point right now in the pack.
Beautiful. And I think it's really important right here. I want to say there's a misconception about the alpha wolf, and
Yeah.
there's a misconception about the lone wolf.
Hmm.
And the thing that people don't understand is that the lone wolf and the alpha wolf are one and the same. And the way it really happens is that there's a pack and there's a wolf that is feeling like its needs are not fully met, like it doesn't get to fully be what it's meant to be, that maybe there's not enough food for the whole pack or there's not a proper mate. But the lone wolf decides, well, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to go out on my own. And that goes through this period of solitude where it's looking for a mate to form a new pack. And then once it forms the new pack, it becomes the alpha wolf.
It's doing it. It's going out on its own for the pack. It's doing it for the pack.
Exactly.
And what's interesting, there was a study on gorillas as well. I use that analogy probably even more often than I do the wolf, but there was a study on gorillas that basically pointed out that the alpha gorilla, the uh, the top gorilla, is they actually change nature when they take that role, and they kind of getting into that role, they can be very myopic. But it's what's amazing is when they take that role, they become very much about the collective and the group. And so
Yeah.
when I say alpha wolf, I've always been about those that I love, the
Yeah.
company I love, and taking care of them. And that's where I spend and find all my joy today. I mean, at the end of the day, when I'm done, if my daughters basically say I took care of them, then I'm happy. That's who I am. So that was a good dad, good father, good alpha wolf. So
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. And remember,
thank you.
everybody, when you operate from the truth of who you are, humanity evolves. We'll see you next time on Be the Wolf.